And now a public service announcement. Friends, this is my friend Chris Perkins. Look at him. He needs a hug and a sandwich, and for somebody to tell him just it's okay and he can step down. Okay, we haven't talked about this yet. I'm surprised I haven't talked about this. I probably should have talked about it, but it skipped my mind. So Chris Perkins came out and said he thinks D&D has too many classes. And if he had the chance to do it all over again, maybe he'd put less classes and more subclasses like, most of the other books are doing now. Which is a weird thing for him to say, especially in the context he's saying it. So if we go to the actual article, which is over here on Games Radar. Games Radar, that's a weird place to find it, but Games Radar. Not the first organization I associate with Chris Perkins talking about the fate of the future of the hobby. But here's his thing. Speaking frankly, and this is my own personal opinion, 12 classes is actually a lot. If I were redesigning it, if I could go back to 2012 to when we were talking about 5th edition for the first time, I would probably put a strong case forward with that we could actually do with less classes in the core game. Keep the choices simple. Because when you're asking somebody to choose between a sorcerer and a wizard, to the untrained, they're the same thing. I mean, a barbarian could just be a fighter, right? So if I were designing the game from scratch, that's what I would do. So that's what Chris said. His words. And there's been a lot of talk about it, especially on some of the ancient D&D sites, and older people who have been through the entire hobby, like I have. Now, this isn't an argument. There's no right answer. Now, this is what I find weird, though, is that his contents is, if I had a chance in 2012, I would have fought for less classes. Well, I play tested D&D Next. I was there when D&D 5th edition was first being considered. And the general response from the first round of the playtest, when it only had fighter, magic user, cleric, thief, was this is fine. You don't need any more. I mean, the largest chunk of the playtest response, first round of D&D Next, was the way this is written is perfect. I love this. And then when they released the second round of D&D Next, and it was a little bit bigger and better, and they added a couple other classes when we were in, they were like more classes, less classes. And pretty much everybody said during the playtest, less classes, more versatility to each class, but without splat books. We don't want splat books. We don't want a repeat of 3. We don't want a repeat of 4. But, we want that. We want the skill tree. We want what, Shadow of the Demon Lord did. We want what Pathfinder's doing now. We want what Daggerheart's trying to do and failing miserably. We want that versatility. And that was the second round of the playtest for D&D Next. Then D&D 5e came out, and it wasn't anything like the playtest. It was completely different. And it had what, like 38 classes, and that's not counting splat books. And then you had the splat books, and you had the hundreds of new subclasses, and like this guy says, there's just too many, and there's nothing really to tell them apart. Oh, you're a fighter that casts wild. Oh, but you're a barbarian that casts spells. Oh, but you're a ranger that you're just So we went through the past 10 years of 5e with the 11 core classes, and then the extra classes like the Blood Hunter and the Architect and the Sandwich Maker, and I don't know what the other classes are. I've lost track. And the argument has always been, some of these don't need to be classes. Barbarian doesn't need to be a class. Bard doesn't need to be a class. Warlock doesn't need to be a class. They could all be subclasses, fighter, magic user, cleric, thief. It's really all we need still. And then just permutations, but we don't want a lot, like 4 each. Like, Shadow of the Demon Lord does a really good job with it, with the primary classes, and then the secondary, and then the masteries. And that's what, DC 20 is sort of trying to do, and I think that's what Daggerheart's trying to do. So it can be done. It can be done well. It can be done poorly. You want the versatility, but you don't want so many splat books. So here he is saying on the eve of 2024 D&D, if I could go back and change things, I would. Well, Chris, you just had a chance to go back and change things. You had a year long of people playtesting 2024 D&D and telling you exactly what they wanted. And you guys ignored that. I mean, I know you claim, oh, we listened to you, but really you didn't listen to us. You just kept changing the questions until you got the answers you wanted. Because if you're looking at the initial responses to the very first surveys, there was a lot of things people wanted to change. And one of them was too many subclasses, too many classes. I don't need 12. I don't need a fighter and a barbarian and a ranger and a paladin and a monk and a blood hunter and a whatever else it is and this thing. I don't need a wizard and a sorcerer and a warlock and an alchemist and an artifactor and a whatever else thing. You just have Shadow of the Demon Lord, core, tree, but no splat books. So why say this now? So there's a couple different ways I'm looking at this, because you got to remember Chris Perkins has a history of fucking with us. He's done this before, where he sort of suddenly hits at something, either through when he was, doing plays with acquisition or talks, where he I think it's his way of rebelling. I think there is part of Chris Perkins that really hates working for Wizards. And you see that from time to time. You see his rebelling. And sometimes he drops these little bombs as sort of a way to, I think, get away with stuff and say stuff. But hopefully he does it in such a subtle way that you're not really sure. So there's a lot of different ways to look at this. So we know there's 12 classes in the brand new Player's Handbook. I don't know why, but there's 12. So we got the core 4, fighter, magic user, cleric, thief, right? Then we got all the weird classes. We got barbarian, which doesn't need to be a class. We got bard, doesn't need to be a class. We got ranger and paladin. There's arguments that neither of those don't really need to be a class, especially since they keep nerfing rangers. We got the monk, right? We got cleric, druid, magic user, sorcerer, warlock, and artificer. Sorcerer and wizard, kind of the same thing. Warlock doesn't really need to be its own class. I've argued that from day one. And then, of course, each one of those is going to have anywhere from 3 to 300 subclasses. Now, again, let's go back. What is Chris saying, and why is he saying it now? What is the mind game Chris is playing with us now? All right. So there's a couple different ways to look at this. I've come up with 5 so far. The amazing school of Chris Perkins messing with us. So we know that the big claim about 5e, 2024 5e, is backwards compatible. This is it. These are the last books you're ever going to have to buy, and these are the last books we're going to make, right? There won't be any new editions, and we're not really going to do splat books. This is everything you need, plus 2014 to now is backwards compatible. So you already have everything you need. So between the 10 years glut of official canon stuff and the new stuff and the vague promise that this is it, we're done, there's no need for more books after this, is he, theory number 1, hinting that there actually will be more splat books. He's saying, I wish there were more subclasses. So even though we said you're not going to need any new books and we're not going to make any new books, this is my way to subtly tell you, well, actually, fuck you. We are going to make new books because we're wizards and that's what we do. So is this his way of saying, well, because I would have liked more classes, and if I could have gone back and had a chance to redo it, well, you did. So is he saying, maybe we're going to do more books in 2005, 2006, and 2027, even though we said we don't? Or is this his way of, again, reaffirming the myth that it's backwards compatible? Well, I want to have more subclasses. So thankfully it's backwards compatible. So the 3,000 subclasses that exist between 2014 and today in the 2,700 official books we've made, plus the third-party shit that's official, you have a plethora of subclasses. So as much as I wanted to put them in, I don't have to because they're already there. They're a plethora. Do you know what a plethora means, Marhawkwin? Would you say I have a plethora of pinatas? A cornucopia? See, OGGM, you have a plethora of pinatas. Theory 3. Is this his way of telling us, well, I know we said there's no new editions, but actually 2027 D&D 6X, there will be a new edition, and that edition is going to have less classes and more subclasses and look more like all the other games now. Because, the general feeling with the evolution of the hobby is the Wizards of the Coast setup is kind of stale. I don't think you know what a pinata is, Marhawkwin. So when I say, do I have a plethora of pinatas? And you say, yes. Sorry, that's the Three Amigos, El Jefe and the pinatas. Did you say I have a plethora of pinatas? Jefe? So is this his way of saying, I'm hinting that there will be a new D&D and actually everything we've said is a lie? Or does he really mean it? Is this his way of saying, I really mean it? This could just be Chris Perkins being subtle and going, screw you, Wizards. I'm taking this moment to express the direction I really think the game should go. And I really think there's too many classes and not enough versatility, and we should really have rethought it because we had a chance to rethink it and gone a different direction, right? Howdy, Shadow and Sun. Which leaves us with this weird statement of all people to say it at this time, just sort of floating out there. And you can never tell with Perkins, because he's smarter than he pretends. And he's always thinking. What's the best way for me to manipulate the stuff? So by throwing that out there, he's got everybody that's read it going, hey, yeah, what if? And if I cut down the classes, how would I do it? What would I make the core for? What classes am I going to allow? What classes am I not going to allow? And he starts, he gets to like the weird things like me going, oh, well, what does he mean? And maybe Chris is sitting back in his little fortress of solitude with his hands steepled together with the light behind him going, yes, my plans have come to fruition. They're talking about me. D&D 2027, 6X. Is there too many classes in 5e 2024 with the 12, including the Artifactor class? Now, of course, they're all optional. You don't have to include them. And the subclasses and the feats, those are all optional. You could say no because that always works, right? I mean, I can just every time somebody has said, no, you can't have that in my game because, we already agreed. That's totally gone over. I mean, yeah, right? That's worked every time. No, it never works. It never works. The general unconscious assumption is, if it's in the book, I can use it. Even if you told me I couldn't use it. And even if I've told you my story about one of the very first 5e games I played in. The guy made it very clear it was a human-centric King Arthur campaign. And everybody agreed, human-centric King Arthur campaign. He made it very clear what races were allowed and what races weren't allowed. Everybody agreed. Very first game, people are showing up with Dragonborns and Kitsune. And he's like, no, you guys agreed. And they're like, but it's in the book. Dragonborn's in the book. You gave me the book. I want to be a Dragonborn. So, yeah, it doesn't work. Yeah. I totally agree. And I think, was it Five Torches Deep did it really well. I think Shadow of the Demon Lord does it well. I think what DM Coach is trying to do with DC 20, once he gets it all hammered out, could work. I think it's, there's other games that have tried that and they work. You you have the core 4, fighter, magic user, cleric, thief. Each one has 3 or 4 subclasses, and that's it. And then you go the Diablo build, right? Then you go the Diablo theory, where every level you get to pick your little things that are your thing, right? You have the skill tree, but you don't, between the skill tree and the feats and everything else, you don't need a plethora. Would you say I have a plethora of subclasses, Mar Hockman? You don't need a plethora, because the blueprint is there. So let's do thief, right? Okay, thief, bard, obviously. You throw bard in there, right? Was arcane trickster, maybe? Actually, no, arcane trickster doesn't really need to be one. That could just be a one way to do a bard. I mean, so you like rogue, and then you do like bard, thief, or dungeon scout, whatever you want to call it, and maybe one more or 2 more. I don't know. Assassin, maybe. Is assassin still a character class? I don't think assassin should be a character class, but sure, put assassin in there or something else. So those are your 3, right? You got, and then maybe another one. I don't know. Maybe maybe artifactor is a thief thing. Maybe that's where artifactor goes if you gotta have things. And then you do the same with all the other class. Warrior. You've got hardcore fighter, right? That's one for warrior. You've got brawler, monk, whatever you want to call them, and I don't know, a third one, barbarian. Right? Even though, again, I don't think barbarian should be a class, but okay, you throw barbarian as one of the 3 subclasses for fighter. And if you got to throw another one in there, blood hunter or whatever. Same with all the other classes, cleric, and you got to have ranger and paladin in there somewhere. Maybe ranger is a subclass of rogue or subclass of fighter. Cleric could have paladin, druid, and one other or 2 others. I don't know. Maybe warlock. Warlock goes under cleric as a warped version of cleric. The anti-cleric is warlock. And then the same thing with wizard. You got wizard, and then you got like 3 different ways to do wizard, and maybe artifactor or alchemist is in there. But you only really need 3 subclasses. And then the build for each subclasses, and then you just go the Diablo route. You go the route that Shadow of the Demon Master is doing, or Shadow of the Weird Wizard is doing, where there's the Diablo, the trees, where every level you get like 2 or 3 choices, and if you focus on one, it gets easier, but then it gets harder to buy from the other choices. So at 3rd level, my rogue bard decides, I'm going to pick the fascinate skill. And then at 4th level, I have a choice between making fascinate better or picking a second skill, but now it's cheaper to make fascinate better and more expensive. And then, just keep doing this. It could work. I would get rid of, if I was going to barbarian is not a class. It's not even a subclass, really. It's a background. You're just, at the end of the day, you just want a fighter that is angry and does more damage when he hits, right? That's basically why people play the barbarian, is I want the more hit points and I want to, do more damage when I hit things. So that just doesn't even need to be a class. Bard, I don't know if bard needs to be a class. I've played enough bards now to go, they don't really need to be a class on their own, unless they're really specifically doing the thing that bards are supposed to do, which is battlefield control. So, yeah, that's the whole thing. I'm speculating. I actually wonder if he has cancer, because he looks like, somebody who's going through chemo. He just looks sad. Every time you look at him, he's like, he looks sad, and he doesn't want to be there, And I think this is one of his ways of saying, I don't really want to be here. And there's things I want to do with this game that I can't do. So I'm just going to sort of drop this little bomb out there and make you guys think maybe there's a new version of D&D coming out in 2027. Maybe we're making splat books, even though we said we weren't. I don't know. Or maybe I'm just really saying that if I had a chance to redo it, I would have redone it. Except, of course, he did have a chance to redo it. And he didn't do it. You know, he had a chance in 2012 to redo it, and he didn't. Oh, yeah. Look at any of the interviews he's done with Crawford for the last year. He does not want to be there. As opposed to you watch him DMing Acquisitions Incorporated, he's totally having fun. Yes, as somebody who's playing a bard in a game, I totally agree. He should. I don't think he will. I think he's probably so locked into litigation. So we know there's going to be 12, and there's going to be 3 or 4 for each in the player's handbook. We know they claim that's it. There's no more books. There's no more splat books. Everything will be adventures or campaign settings and stuff like Infinite Staircase and the Vecna thing, right? Or whatever. Or a whole book dedicated to one magic item like the Deck of Many Things. That's what they claim, right? It's backwards compatible. Got these new core books. Since it's backwards compatible, we don't really need to make any more books, right? This is it. We're done. We're just going to make other things because... So is the hint that they lied? Oh, they are going to do more? Is the hint we're actually going to do a new edition, even though we said we done it? I don't know. I just find it weird. Like I said, why now? Why now? And why this? Why do it this way? I mean, this close to the new book coming out. Why now? Because that just puts a little uncertainty behind the new book. If Perkins is basically saying, I don't like the way the new book looks. I wish I had a chance to do it differently. Perkins doesn't like Crawford. They never look happy together. Their offices are on opposite sides of the building. That's how much Chris Perkins wants to be away from Crawford and what's ever going over there. When they moved offices and did the whole new weird setup, Chris Perkins' office is on one side and Crawford's is on the opposite side. Yeah. I mean, like, there's no right answer. You know, this is not blah, 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 blah. This is just really, the question is not, do I agree or disagree that there should be less classes and more versatility? I totally agree. The question is, why now? Why say this now? What is he trying to accomplish? This, if people run with it, which I doubt anybody will, it puts a little bit of, like I just said, it puts a little negative spin. It puts a little uncertainty. It puts a little, wait, what? Because now you're looking at it and you're going, well, Chris Perkins just said he didn't like it. He wished he had a chance to do it different. Maybe I shouldn't get it? That's out there. It's unconsciously, people are thinking, somebody's going to think about it. So why now, Chris? Why now? Just go get a sandwich, Chris. Yes. All good ideas, everybody who's jumping on. Thank you very much. I'm surprised I didn't get into this before. I guess I forgot it was a thing. And then it came up and I was like, yeah, I guess I could talk about it. I don't know if it really counts as news. It's more just a thought experiment, a speculative. I mean, we all had the chance to build our perfect D&D. What would we do? But then that's, the whole point of the OGL and the OSR is that we can build our own perfect version of the D&D. by just including what we like and tossing out the stuff we don't like and giving it a cool name like 10 Torches Deep or Dagger to the Heart or Brave, Brave, Brave and Brave or, whatever. And then we release it and hope it gets... Oh, I don't know. Well, you know what? Let's even go back further. Let's just throw rocks at each other like it was originally intended. Yeah. We'll just throw rocks at Mar Hockman because, he doesn't think I have a plethora of pinatas. Would you say I have a plethora of pinatas? In the end, you're going to play the game you're going to play. You're going to play the game the way you want to play it. I think 90% of us have no interest in picking up 2024 D&D. I think it's going to be a fustercluck. It's probably going to be a disaster. They're trying so hard to make it hip. But I think their moment in the sun is over. And, every time they open their mouths, they self-destruct. And then you have the guy, Chris Perkins, saying, maybe this book's a mistake. If I could do things over, I'd do things a different way. I don't know. Don't look at me. It leaves you thinking. And that's what Chris Perkins does. He drops his little knowledge bombs and then he walks away snickering like the evil mastermind that he is. Anyways, that's it. Just some thought speculation for you guys to consider over the Easter weekend. I will be back tomorrow with the regularly scheduled nonsense. If you appreciate this, let me know. If you never want to hear me talk about this topic ever again, let me know. If you haven't subscribed yet, please subscribe. Help me hit 2,000 subs by August 4th. And of course, please, as we've learned, hit that little notification bell so you're always informed of when the next OGGM adventure posts on the interweb. Yay me. And speaking of yay me, hey, did you know that Wretched Supermax and Wretched Bestiary are now POD on Lulu? So if you've been waiting to pick up the latest 2 Wretched books that I had made, Wretched Bestiary, a year's worth of work, and Wretched Supermax, which I wrote on over about the past 13 Tuesdays. Shadow and Sun knows why. My birthday is on August 4th. So yeah, go to lulu.com, use the links down below, and buy Wretched Supermax and buy Wretched Bestiary. And I'll be back tomorrow. Till then, get off my land.